We are about to be alive now.
All right, thank you. Welcome, YouTube. My name is Chillwave, and today I'll be moderating our Zoom meeting on empirical studies, and I hope we have a fruitful discussion. So, first of all, I just wanted to give a definition of what is empirical evidence. So, empirical evidence is information acquired through observation, experimentation, or direct experience. It relies on tangible, measurable proof from the real world rather than theory, logic, or intuition. And I'd also like to uh, give a definition of peer-reviewed journal articles. These are reports written by experts and evaluated by independent specialists in the same field prior to publication. So, my first question is, what are the best sources of empirical evidence? Maybe you can give your answers. Yes, Moriyuki.
Thanks. Fossils, bones, remains, real remains. Thanks.
Okay. Moriyuki says fossils. Anyone else? Yes, Dorcas.
Okay. Now, the way you frame that question, it's kind of ambiguous because, let me try and switch on my video. There we go. Yeah, it's kind of ambiguous because when you think of sources, you would think of numerous categories. Maybe you should have given us one example, and maybe not the obvious one, because now we won't have anything to say, and then we will have a rough idea of where to go from there. Sources.
Okay. So I guess when it comes to um mhm, let's say psychology, what would you say is the best evidence for how people behave?
In psychology.
Mm.
Well, I've asked you a question and then you asked me back the question.
But you said I can name, you said to name, like to be more specific, because you said there are many categories. So I was saying with the category of psychology, what would you say are the best sources of empirical evidence, like in terms of if you wanted to know how do people behave or how do people think, what empirical evidence would you rely on? Would you rely on evidence? Would you rely on like first-hand experience, on studies, on stories from your friends? What would you rely on?
Okay. Going by how you defined empirical studies, and I also had my own definition. I wrote it down. It's a type of research, because we're not just talking about empiricism in general, We are saying empirical studies. So according to the dictionary I use, it's a type of research that relies on direct hands-on observation, experimentation, or experience to gather real-world data rather than relying solely on logic, theory, or personal opinion. And it has certain characteristics, including being observable. It needs to be observable. It needs to be testable. That's empirical evidence. It needs to be replicable. And there's also the aspect, although this can be narrowed down to the scientific realm, it needs to be falsifiable. I'll explain those traits as we continue. Sorry?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So according to my understanding of that question, I would say that the types or the sources of empirical evidence may be peer-reviewed journal articles. And in fact, there I would add peer-reviewed scientific journal articles, because you can have a journal article that is not scientific in nature. Another source would be a government statistical repository. For instance, the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, I believe they use empirical research, and whatever they publish is a source of empirical evidence. Then you can also consider using educational websites, because these days everything has gone online. Those websites that have .edu and the institution is reputable. It can't just be some backstreet college in the streets of Nairobi. No, it has to be a reputable tertiary institution, a university, preferably, that is known, maybe even worldwide. Yeah. You can, yes, you can also use these established international organizations such as the World Health Organization or the United Nations, there's the World Bank and other international think tanks. Their websites also have .org. They are renowned globally to rely on reputable methods of collecting evidence. I would also add some major news sites, although now this is going into the realm of something that is not necessarily testable, but I think major news sites can be reputable because they fact check the information and they try to be balanced. Although now we are realizing that some might have their own political agenda. Here in Kenya, I think the Standard Group, KTN specifically, they tend to be very biased against the government. Like they just go for the jugular. So you might want to think twice about solely depending on them for your evidence or your news. I would also add high quality textbooks or materials and dictionaries, encyclopedias, and academic sources for reputable, those ones that have been published by reputable publishers.
I have 30 seconds.
Okay. Why? Because they tend to have editorial processes and they fact check their information. But at the top of this list is peer-reviewed scientific journal articles. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dorcas. And what about Morioki? What do you have to add?
Yeah, I don't know if this can go. Picture pictures, audio recordings, and video recordings. Yeah, audio recordings, video recordings, and pictures. Can that work? Thanks.
But can't those be faked?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, they can be okay. Yeah, they can be faked. Yeah, that's the point. Yeah, so maybe that's 50-50.
All right. I guess the next question I would ask, unless anyone has anything else to say, is do you think that peer-reviewed sources are reliable? You guys can just say yes or no. Those of you that are quiet, did you find peer-reviewed scientific journal articles to be reliable? Yes, Moriyuki.
Maybe they can be faked too, like you said. They can also be faked.
Okay, that's one opinion. Anyone else? Dam?
Yeah, evening everyone.
Mhm.
So I think about the issue of trusting those, it depends on actually it's not about trust because it raises other issues such as things like I can say the motive. You don't know the motive of the author. So they could either be the unless there's a way you can prove, or there are other similar studies suggesting so. But if there are limits to let's say the study is just a single journal and there are no other journals supporting it, then there's a probability that it's fake. So it comes down to the intention of the authors. It's not just about just trusting, it's about the intention of the authors. That's all.
Okay. Does anyone else want to say anything else? Yes, Dorcas.
Yes, my answer to that question on whether peer-reviewed journal articles are reliable would be a yes. But I have to qualify it, not 100% of the time, but for the most part, I think it's the most reliable, given all the other forms of evidence that exist out there. And forms of evidence might be a testimonial evidence. It could be a camera, what Morioki was saying. So Morioki was giving an example of evidence, sources of evidence. He was not giving an example of empirical evidence. We need to make that distinction by referring to the definition of empirical studies. So the examples he was giving were forms of evidence, not forms of empirical evidence. So for other types of evidence, you could have a picture, you could have a video, a recording, maybe a CCTV camera captured that event that you are analyzing. You could have, those testimonies or somebody stating something about a certain phenomenon, or it could even just be your personal experience. Those are forms of evidence. So when you contrast that to peer-reviewed empirical studies, they are infinitely superior. You defined what peer review is. What Dan was saying, the authors could have their own intentions and they could be fraudulent. That is, a peer review is actually created in order to eliminate or reduce instances of fraud or other errors in the research that this person was doing. In fact, that is the basis of science. Science is based on falsifiability, where you present your idea, you present your research, and then a group of independent experts, and they must be experts in the field. They have to know all the things that you're discussing or you're looking into, and they have to be independent. They must not belong to your institution, or they must not belong to a certain association that has a particular agenda, you see. So those peers, they are called peers because they belong to that discipline. They will look at the work. You'll tell them, you know what, here is the research that I have done. Prove me wrong. Falsify my work. Yeah. And this actually came within the scientific field when people wanted to prove that their idea was right and the others was wrong. So they needed to falsify what was already there. Now, these peer reviewers look at your methodology. They look at how you analyzed the data. They look at the study design overall, the conclusion. Is it related to the process that you have undergone and the results that you have found? They look at plagiarism. You know, nowadays, with the advent of AI, there's all this possibility of people using that or using other fraudulent methods to create their design. You know, they look at all those in order to confirm that you have done the right thing. And if they come to the same conclusion that you did, then you will be approved. So to me, this is actually a safeguard against
30
personal.
seconds.
Okay, against personal agendas and such things. It imbues accountability and improves the quality of work. It does have some downsides, but since my time is up, let me stop there. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. And we'll come back to this question in a moment, right after we answer the next question, which is, how do you react when you find a peer-reviewed study that contradicts what you believe? So I can give you an example. Apparently, like, I was debating with someone on the effectiveness of the death penalty in terms of deterring murder. And I was just basing it on, you know, psychological reasoning that people are probably less afraid of being in jail for life than they are of being killed. So, you know, logically speaking, I'm sure that would deter some people. But apparently, he cited me some study that said the death penalty is not really an effective deterrent against crime, at least in the US, because what they did is they had looked at countries that had, states that had recently adopted the death penalty versus those that had recently removed the death penalty. So, and they found the crime rate to be similar. So let's say you look at, I don't know, California in 1980 with the death penalty, and you compare the crime rate to 2000 without the death penalty. They found crime rate was the same. Then maybe you go somewhere else and you ask yourself, you see like maybe Texas didn't have the death penalty, but then they had it in 2000, yet, uh, you know, like the crime rate remains the same. That's essentially what the study was saying. So when I saw this, I was a bit perplexed because I'm like, this is a really counterintuitive study, right? And I think for all of us, we have those moments where our intuition is trying to tell us something is true. And if a study goes against that intuition, when it makes a lot of logical sense, it's very hard for us to process or accept that study. The other one I would briefly talk about is personality type theory. So there's a personality test called Myers-Briggs type indicator, but apparently it's been debunked multiple times as pseudoscience. For some reasons, they say that one, it's not uh, replicable, that people who take the test now, like they take it and then 6 months later they get different results. It's also been accused of being binary, too binary, and not being a good predictor of success. So I believe most of those points have already been addressed with MBTI because, for example, they added percentages into the test and whatnot. But anyway, it's one of those things where everyone, like a lot of people who I talk to about MBTI, they're like, oh, it's a horoscope, it's pseudoscience. But I 100% stand behind MBTI. Like, I think it's very reasonable, and we'll get back to why I think this is important. But other than that, other than those two studies, I have literally accepted every other study that I have ever come across. Um, Maybe one or two others, but any other time someone brings up a study to prove me wrong, I have accepted it. Except there's also this other study where it said it was measuring the breast size of women across the globe, and it said that Australians are like have bigger breasts than Kenyans. I don't think that's true from experience, but yeah. But now you guys tell me your experience. What happens? How do you react when you're presented with a peer-reviewed study that contradicts your belief? Yes, Morioki.
Thanks. Do you have a choice? I think you just accept it. If there's evidence, is there a choice really? Just accept it if there are facts. Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes, Thomas.
Thank you, Chillwave. Today I'm signing. I'm signing in from Ottawa. So, hello everyone. There is a study. This is okay, because Statistics Canada takes they do statistics very often and very seriously. And by the way, they don't come door to door. They just bring you the paperwork, and you do your own paperwork. And if you don't do it, they can sue you. But anyway, that's a story for another day. So, Statistics Canada, a couple of years ago, it's probably 10 years ago, said that the newcomer, the Canadians that come from out there, the ones that ourselves that come from out there, are better educated than the Canadians born here. That was kind of hard. Probably it should have been obvious, but it was hard to take in because of just the general behavior that you see with people. Here is somebody you expect that, yes, I know they have PhD, they have this, they have a good degree, but there where they came from, either they were not able to use it or they were not using it the way they should to improve out there, me included. But, somebody comes out here, and even if they are not in that line of work, the work that they do, they will generally do it well. They will generally respect it. That was kind of, it was the kind of thing that you look at it and you probably just do not understand how to take that data, because it is real data. You do know for sure that it is real data because it has come from Statistics Canada, and we know that for you to even get that visa, student visa or visitor visa or work visa, they will have looked at your educational background, look at your certificates. So you do know that, yes, by the time you come here, you do have that education, you do have those certificates and certifications. Thank you. So yes, it should seem to me, I thought that it should seem obvious that that is a fact, but still when it came out, it was, it was a, it was, I don't know, it was a confirmation, but still hard to take in. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Dorcas.
I would say that I'm not perfect. There have been instances where a study has come out that contradicted my beliefs and I denied it. Okay? I denied it. A reason being, oh yeah, by the way, before I answer that question, I would like to pose a question on the previous subtopic to the members. Given what I had described, that peer-reviewed scientific journal articles tend to be reliable, at least more reliable than the other sources of evidence that exist, what do we think about peer-reviewed journal articles that are religious? We have the International Christian Journal or the Journal of Southern Baptists that publishes a lot of material. So when they publish a study there, would you rely on it? Would you believe it? Would you call it empirical in nature? Yeah, that's my question to you. Even if it is peer-reviewed, it's peer-reviewed. They claim it is peer-reviewed, but it's run and it's intended on focusing on theology. So yeah, that's my question to you guys. What do we think about peer-reviewed religious papers? Now, on this question that you've asked about how we react. So yeah, there have been instances where something that was published out there contradicted my worldview. I found that if a study contradicts a belief which I consider to be central to my identity. My identity is that of being an African, a Black woman, an atheist, and a feminist. Okay? So when research papers come out and they say that atheists tend to be lonelier, more unhappy, they tend to be this or that, they paint us in a negative light, my first instinct is to deny it because this is crucial to my identity. Or something about feminism, my first instinct is to deny it. I know it's wrong. I know I shouldn't do that because that is confirmation bias and dogmatic thinking, which should not be how you live your life as someone who considers yourself to be a critical thinker. We should avoid that path of denying an empirical study that contradicts your belief, because beliefs are just that. They are not founded on evidence. You should strive to live an evidence-based life. However, I'm human, and there have been instances where I have denied it, but after a while, I realized, you know what, this does not shatter my world. So I eventually come on board, but the initial response is usually that. I think another reason why I deny it sometimes is because I want to protect my self-esteem. I want to be known as an intelligent person, a person who is evidence-based, who is a critical thinker. So if the research shows that what I have been believing is wrong, then it also means that I'm not that intelligent. You see, yeah, I know it's very twisted, but that's a reason why I deny it, and why many other people respond in that manner when evidence contradicts their beliefs. There's also the issue of us just looking. Oh, hey. Let me just stop there. Answer my question, guys.
So guys, yeah, now getting back to that earlier question, which I was asking, which is, are peer-reviewed sources reliable? A while ago, I'd found something interesting that I just wanted to share, because I was having this argument with someone. I'll give you a bit of context. I was having an argument with a friend of mine who happens to be an entrepreneur, and he had posted a status about another like podcast, you know, these white people who make podcasts about entrepreneurship and stuff like that. Yeah, so basically he said the person was asked in the podcast, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received? And then the entrepreneur, I'm assuming he's an entrepreneur, he could be an athlete or something like that, but his response was, work so hard that it would be ridiculous for you not to be successful. And then I laughed at the status, like I put the laughing emoji, and he was like, why are you laughing? And then it's because I was trying to tell him, I think luck is largely due to success. I mean, success is largely due to luck. Yeah, and basically, if you look at studies, they say that hard work only accounts for maybe 50%, right? And then we had this back and forth where he had even tried to cite me like this book called Outliers. But then when I delved into it, experts were saying the way the statistics were done in Outliers was kind of wrong. And I even sent him another study by Potassium, where they actually did some mathematical study to prove how much luck plays a factor in success in life, right? And yeah, he still denied it. He still denied and said that he believes it's mainly like hard work that determines whether you're successful. This is not the first time um, I've heard someone say that. And the thing is, for me, I've been on both sides of the spectrum in the sense that there are times I've been unlucky, working hard to become unlucky, and there are times I've been lucky. All right. For example, I got to go to a good university, not necessarily because my grades were that much better than my peers, but simply because I had the resources to go to that university. It was more expensive. So, yeah, there are plenty of people who are in that situation. Likewise, I've also been unlucky where maybe I'd want to be an entrepreneur in Kenya, but the money I would make from a job is not as much as someone in the US. But anyway, back to the matter at hand. Uh, I was trying to find out how many studies have actually been debunked, or how many studies have failed to be replicated. And I was shocked. It actually says that when it comes to psychology, only 36 to 47% of studies have been replicated successfully. And this means that over half of published findings fail replication. And when it comes to economics, uh, only 61% of replications succeed, and roughly the same numbers for sociology. The field in which it's less prone to error is more something like scientific fields like physics, for example. Obviously, there have been some that have been debunked. The ones I have here are, I think, there's cold fusion and superillumination neutrinos. That's been debunked. But essentially, it's only in fields like physics where uh, the peer-reviewed studies, have a high replication rate. So once I learned that, I guess I started thinking, maybe it's understandable why someone would argue against a study, right? And it made me feel even more confident about arguing for the success of MBTI. So to touch on what Docker said, when it comes to whether we should trust studies, I would say it highly depends. So with psychology, it's a 50-50. With the rest, it's a 50-50. But now that leads us to the final question of when should we trust our own reasoning instead of a peer-reviewed study? Because as Dorcas put it, peer-reviewed studies are essentially the gold standard. So ideally, we should base our life, or rather, we should base our thinking on peer-reviewed studies. But at the same time, we know that there's logic, right? We can reason that certain things are not true. Like, for example, there's another study that said cohabitation before marriage is more likely to lead to divorce or something like that. But the reality is that that study ended up being debunked, that it has no effect or whatever on marriage. And there's another study saying that a little alcohol is good for you. But again, that study was debunked because it found that I can't remember, but something I know what it involved is that some people it's that they were previously alcoholics, so then they quit, and they quit for good, but they were making up part of that population that doesn't drink, yet they had poor health. Yet there were those people that were moderate drinkers that were in better health than the previous ones. So that's why it made it appear that drinking some alcohol is good, when really the reality is it's not that no alcohol is bad. It's just some of those people who do not take alcohol uh, happen to be recovering alcoholics, something along those lines. Maybe I'm butchering the study. So that's my final question to you guys. When should we trust reason as opposed to peer-reviewed scientific studies? And to answer Dorcas's question, when it comes to a church study, it depends on what the study is about. Studies could be like, do teens prefer traditional gospel music over modern gospel music? Studies could be like, what percentage of female bishops are out there? Those are still studies, right? Those are demographic studies that fall within theology, right? Or maybe it says that people are converting more to Protestantism than Catholicism. Those are studies I assume you'd find in such journals. Again, you'd have to link them to me because I've never seen those journals. But yeah. Anyway, Thomas, go ahead since Morioki, you've already spoken many times, but you'll be next after Devin.
Okay. Thank you, Chillwave. Thanks, Morioki. First of all, to answer Dorcas's question, the peer-reviewed religious research or a religious paper or religious statistics, or if any peer-reviewed research or paper or data, I want to first of all ask myself who those peers are. Is it an echo chamber? Because if it is an echo chamber, you have to just be as skeptical as you normally. Just be your normal skeptical self. Because it might be selling a narrative. And now, this is where I go to mention a few researches, a few things that have been sort of echo chambers for people with similar thought process, or they have got something, some reason to sell a certain narrative. In the early 90s, there was this research, quote unquote, because it was just garbage, that said that if you played classical music to your in vitro child or whatever they were going to grow, they would be becoming intelligent and all that. That obviously, anyway, that was debunked later on. Another thing that has been debunked was the relationship between vaccines and autism. That one also has been debunked with the studies and with everything, because here you're looking at parents who have autistic children and they want to find somebody to blame. So therefore, you are not going to be getting any sensible research in that, because they are looking for something. They are looking for somebody that cold fusion has been mentioned, so I'm not going to go there. There was a certain study, something I read somewhere, something called Thanos. And the researcher was a lady in the United States. But all that, it was just a whole lot of garbage. What was that? Thanos. It was a way of sampling blood or whatever without any pain, or what. It was just a whole garbage. But she got a lot of support for whatever reason. but it was just it was just garbage. So for us, we have, when you see something has been peer reviewed, you need to read it for yourself. Read it with your own skepticism, but you might even not know psychology. That is now the problem, because you might not really know psychology or sociology or economics. Then you have got a problem being being skeptical about this data, because you don't know this subject matter. It's not straight away as, say, Boyle's law, where it is a volume of a gas and the pressure. That much I know, because actually, some things are so easy to understand and so physical. For example, pressure and volume of a gas. Those are so physical, so physics. It's easy even for somebody who is not a physicist to understand what is happening to a gas. But then some things in economics and sociology and in psychology, it is very hard to, even when you read this thing, it's very hard, and it is easy to be cheated. And then once you are fooled, down the road you will find it very hard to to accept anything. You are going just to be skeptical of everything, and that becomes really hard to judge things or to be a good judge of things. And if you are really a skeptic, you just be skeptical of everything and kind of wait until some other results are produced by somebody else to tell you that that is debunked. But right away, right in the beginning, I think it would be very difficult if you are not a specialist or you are not in that field. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Morioki.
Yeah, thanks. I think for the question of Dockers, you have to be more specific. Dockers, like Chilu have said, you have to give an example of what the thing is talking about. Is it health? Is it religion? So once then we can know, because at times they can be talking about health and be right. It can be religious in that they're talking facts about health. Yeah, so Dockers, I think your question should be more specific. Then about Chilwell, some things like which I question, like things of psychiatry, depression, headaches. I think at times medicine makes it worse, because you can have a headache because of stress or too much thinking. So at times this medication, at times I don't trust it when it comes to depression, migraine, such things. So in such cases, question what you know about yourself and the medication. Thanks.
Thank you, Morioki. What about Maestro?
Yes, I hope you are all doing well. So I want to answer two questions I've interested in answering, but not I've not don't have much to say about maybe some research that can come out and contradict whatever I have been knowing or believed for a long time. My first instinct is just to look at the source. What is the source of the findings? Is it really something trustworthy? And secondly, does it really make sense to? Because for me, I'm a critical thinker. I don't really believe stuff or treat stuff as facts before I've fact checked those the research or the findings, or just to put it into a simpler way. I just ask myself, can it really make sense, or what do other sources say apart from this source? If it contradicts the others, maybe there is some mistake these guys they might have made along the way. Secondly, a research that comes from, even if it is peer-reviewed research or findings that comes from a religious organization, I'm saying this with the I don't know what to say, but I would never ever trust any research that comes from a religious organization, especially if it touches on people who are not religious like them. I would never trust any research from a religious organization because they have an agenda. That is a fact. And as you all know, not only in Africa, even in Europe, in other countries like in North America or South America, religion it is also used by politicians to drive an agenda. Not only here in Africa, even in those other places. So I would never ever trust a research from a religious organization, especially if it touches on people who are not religious, because I know that there is an agenda they are driving. Because research is somehow scientific, and if they are really they really trusted science, they would not be religious in the first place. So I would never really, even if they say it's peer reviewed, no, I would never trust anything that comes from a religious organization. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay. But I mean, you've not even looked at them, so how can you say you'd never trust them?
I don't need even to look at them. I don't need to. Because I know there is an agenda. They always have an agenda that they are
But
driving.
isn't that an ad hominem or genetic fallacy, like basing something on where it's from rather than what it is?
But there's a reason why. Because you all know, everyone knows about the relationship between religious leaders and politicians.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For me, I would never. I'd not say anything that comes from them is not true, but I would never trust it 100%. I would ask. I would tell myself there must be something. What is this agenda that they're trying to drive from this research?
All right, fair enough. Do you have anything else you'd like to add? Okay, Dorcas.
Okay, before I answer your question, and chances are I might not because my time will run out, since I have so much to say. You will just tell me when my 5 minutes are up. I'll start with answering
It's
my
okay.
own
It's the
question.
last. It's the last question. So I think no one else wants to answer. So just take as much time as you want.
Okay. So let me begin with the question that I asked you guys. Would you trust empirical evidence, or let's not even call it empirical evidence, let's just say, would you trust peer-reviewed studies, peer-reviewed religious papers? And my answer is no, I wouldn't, for the above reasons. One, it is not independent. As I said previously, I trust peer-reviewed scientific journals because the experts are independent, the ones that do the peer review. They don't belong to the same ideological school of thought. They do not have an agenda that they are pushing. These theological journal articles, they tend to defend the doctrine of that religion. Let me just give you examples of some Christian journal articles so that you guys can check them out in your free time. There is Africa Journal of Evangelical theology, theological studies, African Theological Journal for Church and Society. There's Journal of Christian Ministry, Journal of Pastoral Care and Counseling, Christianity Today, Christian Science Journal. Kwanzaa, be very skeptical of that Christian Science. It's full of a lot of pseudo-scientific information. Anyway, when I clicked on the Journal of Christian Ministry, I found the following titles: Evangelizing the Imagination, Christian Engagement with Japanese Anime and Spiritual Storytelling. Another one, Meaning Making in Movie Watching for Spiritual Growth. Another one, Faithful Presence in a Fractured World, Strategies for Faithful Cultural Engagement in Ministry. Different one, A Theological Reflection on Spiritual Care Created in the Image of God. This other one, Practice the Pause, Jesus Contemplative Practice, New Brain Science and What It Means to Be Fully Human. Yeah, and many, many more. So, from those titles, you can see that there is an imbued assumption that spirituality is real. I, as a naturalist, contest that assumption. Even just that term spirit, it lacks evidence. So I would be skeptical of this group since they have created that journal in order to defend their doctrine, which is very light on evidence. Another thing that would make me skeptical is the fact that they prioritize faith over evidence. And faith to me is, especially faith in the religious realm, is really useless. Faith in the colloquial sense, I have faith in my co-worker. I have faith that my customer will pay me on time. That one is inevitable. You can't run away from it. But faith in the religious realm, to me, it's useless. So, and then the other reason why I would be skeptical of them is the fact that they have a lot of institutional conflicts, issues around transparency, around funding, etc. Bottom line, they are not independent peer reviewers. They suffer from confirmation bias, and they are there to defend their doctrine, to push their agenda. That's why I would be skeptical. Now, let me switch to your final question. When should we trust our own reasoning when peer-reviewed studies say otherwise? I was trying to look at the names of those journals, so I had moved. Let me turn on my video to answer this one. I think, there we go. So I think people need to be, am I there? Can you hear me?
Yes,
But
we can't see.
Okay. Yeah, it's because I've accidentally pressed something that has taken me sijui where. Okay, anyway, let me continue talking as I try to get back my video. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
I think. Okay. So I think that we need to teach ourselves information literacy. That is what will protect us from faulty empirical studies or peer-reviewed studies. And there are certain criteria you use to judge whether a study is trustworthy. You need to look at the sampling that they did. Did they only rely on a handful of people in order to come to their conclusion? Or did they depend on a large swath? You see, I remember we once had this discussion of male circumcision and whether it reduces sexual sensation. And I remember looking at a lot of journal articles, the ones that tended to say it does reduce sensation, they tended to have very small sample sizes. Then the ones that said it was neutral, that the men reported, they were just there, like they were the same. They tended to rely on larger sample sizes. So that could be one giveaway. Another thing could be that it did not account for confounding variables. Let's say you are looking at gender-based violence and the COVID lockdown. What is the correlation between the gender-based violence and the lockdown? Does the lockdown increase cases of husbands battering their wives, or vice versa, wives battering their husbands? If you don't consider the case of the stay-at-home parent as a confounding variable, a confounding variable is something that interferes with the results. If you don't consider whether the partner being beaten is a stay-at-home parent or whether they work, you might come to different conclusions. So look at that study and check whether they considered confounding variables. Sometimes it could be an issue of correlation versus causation. Sometimes some things are coincidental to an idea, but they're not the ones that cause it. Maybe the study didn't take those into consideration. For example, when we were looking at the issue of sex work last week, when you check out countries that have decriminalized sex work, and you look at instances of HIV among sex workers, you might be tempted to draw the correlation that decriminalizing prostitution causes low HIV prevalence, yet that might be causation, a causation-correlation mismatch. It might be other things. Maybe that country is also doing other anti-HIV programs. Maybe they give out free condoms, or they engage in sex education from an early age. So it's those things that are reducing the instances of HIV. It's not the decriminalization of prostitution. So you need to take into account all of these aspects before you believe a study. So what does that mean for us? Where do we go from there? I would recommend that you consider looking at meta-analysis. Don't just stick to one study because one study might be erroneous. Look at meta-analysis, because meta-analysis bring together the body of peer-reviewed research on a particular area, and then they tell you whether it is going in this direction, whether the phenomenon you're studying is going in this direction, or whether it's going in that direction. And lastly, I would also say that psychology and sociology tend to be very, very vague disciplines. Yeah, because humans were really complex creatures. So I would be more trusting of empirical studies that are in the realm of medicine, you know, like the example Endeavor gave of studying the link between autism and vaccines. It has been debunked. There is no correlation. You know, things that look at biology, science, those ones I would have more confidence in them compared to matters about sociology. You know, maybe I'm studying the link between whether higher education can guarantee you a job. You know, there are so many confounding factors in that kind of analysis that it would be hard to come to a conclusion. But when it comes to now the medical or the biological, the scientific, the strict scientific subjects, I think I would be more trusting. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that information. Deve, any closing remarks?
Yes, I will close by saying that when it comes to religious journals and whether we can trust them, unlike scientific or even economic, which might go with real data. The thing with the religion, let us say Abrahamic faith, is the insistence, their insistence that exists a God. But you will never find a journal or an article that questions that the faith, that blind faith on that God, because it's the premises, it's the main premises of the existence of that faith, although they will go into into Christ and crucifixion and all those. There will never be a peer-reviewed. Who would have to review it? We would have to review that journal on the existence of God. They will not do that because that would be putting themselves out there, putting themselves on the cross, so to say, and questioning the very thing that they base their faith on. And they will never do that, while science does that all the time. Economics might even do that all the time by taking some empirical data and plugging it into and checking how that data relate to each other, maybe poverty, education, and all that, and checking how that data empirically relate to each other. But you can never they would never be able to take faith and put it into, the rate of being healed or the rate of being rich. Because the people who believe in God, since God is so rich, the people who believe in God empirically, they should be rich. They should never be sick. They should ask anything and they should get it empirically, because that is what their faith says. That's what their God says. But you can never, it is not empirically true. They suffer just the way I suffer. I get sick, they get sick. I live in poverty, they live in poverty. So very many rich people who don't even believe in God. How did they get to get all the riches from God and they don't believe in God? So that is why I'm saying that they would never go there, because empirically it would never agree. It would always have to be in faith, and the faith that cannot be questioned. So I close it with that and saying that empirically we will stay with science and we will be very safe with science, because in science we will be dealing with the physical things. In psychology and other things, I will stay right out of there to psychology and sociology. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Deve. Does anyone else have any closing remarks? Okay, if there's no one else with any closing remarks, then I would like to thank everyone for joining today's meeting, and hopefully you all learned something. And thank you for watching on YouTube.
Thank you, Chillwave. And thank you for moderating it on time. To all the participants, including El Maestro, Morioki, Deve, who today identified as Thomas. She was transgender for the meeting. Yeah, I appreciate your sentiments. I think I heard from a gentleman called Dam. He's now logged out of the meeting, but he gave his contribution at a certain point. So thank you, Dam, for your sentiments. Luchavileli, I can't help but see your picture. In fact, apart from me, you're the only other person who has a profile pic. Is there anything you would like to say concerning the topic of empirical studies, any of the subtopics? Like, how do you react when you find peer-reviewed studies that contradict your beliefs? When should you trust your reasoning? When peer-reviewed studies say otherwise? Is there anything you would like to comment on? Okay, probably he might be. He's saying he's unable to talk, but I liked the argument, though I came late. No worries. Sawa sawa, thank you so much, everyone. Please remember to like and subscribe to our channel. And it's Atheists Hangout 2. Okay, Atheists Hangout 2. Then if you want to view this recording, go to the tab that is written on live. You'll find this recording and all our other Zoom recordings. If you want to see the videos from our video shoot, go to the tab that has videos. So when you click on the channel name, Atheists Hangout 2, you'll see various tabs, you'll see videos, live, posts, etc. So for this recording, you go under the live section, you'll find it there. But for other videos, you go under the video tab. Morioki, I'm especially speaking to you because you had reached out on another video that we did. Yeah, I wish you guys a fantastic weekend. Let's meet next week for another topic. And please note that our meetings will now be 1 hour long or 1 hour short for that matter, because our concentration spans have reduced. People are finding it hard to stick to longer meetings. So yeah, let's keep that in mind. Have a good night.
Good night.